Everyone wants to take their business, their skills, to the next level. Small and mid-sized business owners have exceptional insight into how to do this. They endure and thrive because they find ways to overcome the challenges that come their way, and they can teach us valuable lessons to apply to our own companies and lives. Stephen Nooner, founder and owner of Alkali, a company with a unique process that helps businesses more effectively buy and manage their insurance programs. And Bob Gibbons, builder of Riata Commercial Realty, a real estate advisor and tenant advocate, are two prominent Metroplex businessmen who, along with their weekly guests, will ask their and your probing questions, finding impactful solutions that will help you reach for the next level. Here are your hosts, Stephen Nooner and Bob Gibbons.
Welcome to The Next Level, conversations that propel business. I'm your host, Bob Gibbons.
And I'm your host, Stephen Nooner. And we have a exciting guest today that I'm really excited to introduce. His name's Tad McIntosh, and he's the president of HumCap. HumCap, they are experts in people. They provide staffing, recruiting, HR support, both on a contract and fractional basis for companies, and they're really just in the people business. If you want to learn more about HumCap or Tad, please visit humcapinc.com or humcaphr.com. Welcome, Tad.
Thank you for having me.
Glad you're here.
Glad to be here.
So we always start off the shows with wisdom of others, we call it, and that's where we have a quote from somebody probably way smarter than at least Stephen and I are. And so we decided to use your quote for the day. We don't always do that, but we did today. We like the quote. It is actually from Colossians 3:23, the NIV version. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. So why is that important to you, Tad?
Well, for me, it's important because it frames a lot of what we do and at what level we should do things, because in our business, like all businesses, have a lot of demands. The world's changing fast, and some clients are fun to work with and some aren't. But when we really frame what's important in life is to think about we're serving our Lord, and even if you don't have that exact ideology, it's still a really big, ideology to think about, even if it's not your own personal belief, because our clients are who we really work with and for. And sometimes that's a great thing. Sometimes that's hard, but we try to reframe it and position ourselves in a way that we're serving for an eternal purpose, not just oh gosh, how do I get through this hour, this day, this week, or this year?
So Stephen had an interesting observation when we were talking about this before the show. What was your observation about this particular quote?
Well, and I mean, that's for an hour-long conversation about something else. But what I thought was interesting about the quote is that so often with all those pressures, I think that people, it's easy even for me to forget that if we just serve and really serve people in that kind of way, that everything has a way of working itself out. Or sometimes I think there's a tendency to forget the Lord or forget that we're really there to serve, and then people shortcut something and then for immediate gain or but it's not the long-term rewards even that can occur earthly. So kind of we really focus on this in our DNA of our company, and what I've found is a lot of people join our company from other of our competitors and they don't essentially get our approach, but long term, when they see the number of referrals we get, we see that people that are with our competitors that still refer us. I mean, like we've seen a long-term reward earthly, not just hopefully what we'll see heavenly.
Absolutely. It's good business.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, if you would, at an elemental level of business, if you frame it in hey, I'm serving at a very higher basis than lots of people normally do, you're going to do better than your competition. And if you think about one of the funny phrases is, okay, if this was in the newspaper and this was a headline, do you want this headline? Mm-hmm. Is this how you want to be serving? Am I serving for me, or am I serving for them, or am I serving multiple interests, and how do I balance those? Yeah. Because that's one of the biggest challenges in our world, and even in your world of the benefits world, is you've got a lot of constituencies and a lot of parties involved. Yeah. That you like the old win-win-win, not the win-lose or the lose-win, but you have a lot of people involved if you can figure out, okay, how do we get win-win-win?
Yeah. So even though it's not taught in business school, I think it should be, because for me, sharing that same philosophy, perspective with you, I of course want to honor God, but the other piece to that for me is like, wow, like I've seen incredible blessings in this life by taking that approach.
Yes, absolutely.
But it's, again, maybe counterintuitive a little bit. So
one of the things I thought was cool about you is we asked you something about yourself that was maybe not everybody knows, and that is that you went to West Point and were an Army officer. That's pretty cool. What tell us real briefly about that?
Cool.
It was a very neat experience, and I was honored to be able to both go to West Point and serve in the Army as an officer and just as a soldier. Because it's an honor to be able to, the further I get away from it, the more special I understand it is and it was based on perspective. But I started out with wanting to serve and knowing that I wanted to keep growing as a person. And when I looked at West Point as a primary university, it's an engineering school. It's the first engineering school that's accredited in the United States, founded by Thomas. Yeah, Thomas Jefferson signed a bill in 1802 that he wanted an engineering school, a military engineering school, so we could settle the West. And most people don't know that it started as that for surveyors and engineers and all those kinds of things. So it's a combination of learning. It's a really good school, and then serving. So I really enjoyed that aspect of that, and I just knew when I was there I fit, and I had gotten into other colleges and other things. So I went there, and then I served as an infantry officer in the Army. After that, I served for 6 years, and really probably one of the best things about when you think about it, and when people do know me and get to know me, they're like, I use the phrase, well, sometimes you can take somebody out of the military, but sometimes you can't take the military out of somebody. And that's at all branches of service and at all ranks and all things. You'll see a lot of people, and like when you meet a retired sergeant major or a retired colonel or retired whatever, you see it. And so I was in long enough to be able to both appreciate those things, and then it really does help in business in a lot of ways.
So at 6 years, you were major?
Actually, a captain.
Captain, okay.
A captain.
Very cool. My dad was career military, so he tried getting out one time. It lasted 6 months. He got right back in.
Yeah, and that's not unusual, because sometimes it's such a different environment when you're getting out, and I work with a lot of young men and young women when they're getting out, and we're not specifically in the military placement side, but I network and mentor a lot of what I would call young folks and middle-aged folks getting out of the military, and try to help them understand and frame the differences of service in the military, whatever that job was they did there, and that what they're going to do as whatever the job they're going to do as a banker, working in retail, working in the food and beverage industry, whatever it might be, how that applies. But I think one of the commonalities, if you were to blend into when we talked about before, like on the verse, is serving. So serving is a key, core, critical part of that, and something that I think if you could take a lot of things out of me, but I'll always try to be serving in one form or fashion, and it's what I kind of naturally gravitate towards. And then end up being able to do a lot of, if you will, is serving and helping, and that's why a service-based industry I did well at and started a company to do.
So, and let's get into the company a little bit more. So, I gave kind of a cursory overview, but what really makes you guys unique? Because there's a lot of HR consultants, there's lots of HR firms, there's many people that are recruiters.
Oh yeah.
What's the distinction for you guys?
I think one of the big distinctions is the level of integration between the HR and the recruiting in our company, because there's a lot of staffing and recruiting firms, and there's a whole lot of HR firms. There aren't a whole lot of firms that are both HR and the recruiting and staffing. So within our recruiting and staffing services, there's a lot of built-in HR process that our customers aren't even really charged more for, in the quality of both job descriptions, interview process, onboarding, and helping make sure that they get the best fit. Like, our mission is to glorify God and help our clients win the war for talent. Okay, and so you kind of hear the first two things we talked about with, okay, there's a spiritual component, and then here's this, military, the guy doing that. So, and there really is a war for talent. If you go anywhere that we're under 5% unemployment,
sure,
it's hard to find good people. It's hard to find the right, good folks that fit your mission, your values, and then functionally what you do as a company, whether that be real estate, benefits, radio, whatever, entertainment, whatever that might be. So, biggest differentiator is the integrated level of services of recruiting and HR. A second thing we think makes a difference is our mission and our core values. So we see it at a little different level. Our client tenure tends to be a little longer than a lot of people in the staffing industry, that they're just very, very transactional based. We can't survive as a company without economic transactions, but that's not the heart of the company. The heart of the company is making other companies better through long-term relationships with understanding their business and their people, and being able to be consultative and HR-driven consultative around who should they select and why. And then secondly, on the HR side, really being able to, it's big differentiated to be fractional and team. So we're not just one consultant. I have 10 HR consultants that, so when one of my HR consultants wants to go on vacation, another person can step in. When one person isn't an expert in the 200 areas of HR that you need to be an expert to know everything, another consultant can step in and either help them or directly help the client in that way. So our broad-based team approach to HR consulting and outsourcing is different than many of the people out there.
And so that probably helps with your team on the HR. What about the recruiting and staffing side? There tends to be tremendous turnover there in that role. I mean, having a mission like yours, how do you do that? How do you make sure that you get and retain great talent yourself in a turn and burn? Most of the recruiting side, I have friends that, and it's very few people can stand up to that a long period of time.
Yes. There's a couple things. One is as a strategic thing that we are from both a values and a process. One of our values is win as a team. Well, we usually have multiple people involved with any one client. Like this morning, somebody emailed me last night at 10 o'clock at night. Oh, Tad, we met at this tech function, and oh my gosh, this person quit on us, and I need somebody immediately, and we need to start. And I'm like, okay, we'll talk tomorrow about it. But when we did our call with that client this morning, I had four people on the call. A person who's going to make sure we get them contracted, the person who actually is going to do the recruiting, and me, who's the original relationship person. So to be able to say how we can do it and keep people is we tend to break up the tasks so that people can be better at those tasks and they don't have to be, a one-person band,
right?
If you will.
Okay, we have about 30 seconds before we go to a break, but what verticals, industries do you guys focus on?
In the recruiting side, it's mainly IT and technology industries.
Okay.
In HR, it's really broken by size of company from the 5 to 500 employee size groups.
Okay.
So they're a little different, but we have a lot of clients that have both.
A lot of crossover.
A lot of crossover in there.
Okay.
Sure. All right, so we're going to go to a break. Before we do, what is the difference between time usage and time management? Stick around and we'll learn from Tad.
And now, Confessions of a Recovering Landlord.
This is Bob Gibbons with Riata Commercial Realty, and I am your recovering landlord. After 20 years as a landlord, I now use that experience only for the benefit of companies that lease or buy office buildings and warehouses. Today's confession: knowledge is power. We all negotiate from a position of power and strength, or at least we want to. In any negotiation, the party with the most knowledge probably has the upper hand. And landlords count on this being the case whenever you're negotiating a lease, because most landlords are professional real estate investors and they hire professional leasing agents and property managers. Landlords are in the market every day negotiating leases, while tenants probably only negotiate 1, maybe 2 leases every few years. So tenants feel outgunned. Don't let landlords have all the power. As a former landlord for 20 years, I understand how landlords think and what motivates them. So let me put that knowledge and experience to work on your side of the negotiation. To learn more, contact me at texastenantrep.com. Again, that's texastenantrep.com.
Have you started making plans to take your business to the next level in 2016? Hi, I'm Stephen Nooner, founder and CEO of Alkali. We have a trademark process called the Empowered Advantage that enables CEOs, business owners, and entrepreneurs to more effectively buy and manage their insurance. Before sitting down to make your plans for the new year, here are just a few things to consider. Would you say that you have an actual insurance strategy, one that you can articulate, or have you just purchased a policy here and there over the years? If you have an insurance strategy, was it discussed under the pressure of a renewal deadline or considered earlier in the year to avoid fire drill decision making? If your answer was no to either of these questions, then you may not have the right partner on your team. Visit alkaliservices.com to contact us and take the next step to a bigger and better future.
Hi, this is Henry Exall. I'm the founder and managing partner of Exall Wood, a boutique corporate and real estate law firm here in Dallas. I've just finished our segment with Bob and Steve, and I've got one more for you guys. Lawyer up.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Next Level. We're here with our special guest, Tad McIntosh, President of HumCap. If you want to learn more about Tad, please visit humcapinc.com or humcaphr.com.
So I'm interested in knowing how you got into this business in particular. I mean, you went through the Army and such. So how did you end up in Texas? How did you end up in this industry, and what led to it?
Well, when I was getting out of the Army, my last assignment in the Army was actually in Army recruiting. And so I have an engineering degree from West Point, and I was in Army recruiting when I was getting out. So
wow.
I interviewed in different jobs, and the things that were resonating were sales and technology. And basically, recruiting is a skill set and a set of processes, but you have to have a fundamental underlying capability to sell both companies and ideas and, kind of put pieces together. So I started off in the recruiting industry in technology straight out of the Army, and I came to Dallas. My wonderful wife Pam is from Dallas, and I got an offer to go to just about any branch that this company had, but I selected the Dallas branch because Pam was from Dallas, and we had one son. And
smart man, yeah.
There you go. Another one on the way, and I resonated best with that managing director of the office because he was a son of a Marine Corps Sergeant Major, so we kind of clicked in terms of him understanding what does that military thing mean a little bit.
You must have scared the hell out of people in your office between the two of you.
Yes, there was a little bit. Yes, there were a few scared people. And
they have to say, sir, yes, sir, all the time.
They didn't, but, well, it's because most of them were much older than I was, and they didn't, but they dealt with who's this guy getting out of the military, learning this, and then they figure out, okay, this guy has more than one clue about how to do this. So it was a real good transition into the recruiting industry and working with startups and working with, in the mid-'90s, all the .coms and all the telecom companies in Dallas and in Richardson that were scaling. So I had kind of a layup of an intro into the marketplace from the market was really good. And multiple clients came to me saying, hey, we want you to come in-house and be our in-house talent and recruiting person. And then finally I got to one of my clients said, we really, really want you to. So I sat down and really had a conversation with him. So I went in as this funny title as the Chief Talent Officer for a startup company in the voice over IP and voice over DSL business in Plano. Wow. And that company had venture capital funding, and I went in as the Chief Talent Officer to help them grow from 15 to 150 employees. And we did that right around the time when the .com crash and then the telecom bubble burst, and then the venture capitalists decided they were going to do something different with the company. So we basically we had taken it from 15 to 150. We took it back down to 15, and it was really difficult. It was right in the summer of 2001. And when I was at that company, I started thinking, golly, all the different things in HR and recruiting you need at different times of growth, whether you're a 5-person company, 15, 25, 50, 100, 150, just very different needs and very different things. So I thought of, wow, what if you could offer fractional HR and fractional recruiting services to these small businesses? I saw that the market need might be there. And so when the company, the venture capitalists, decided to sell off the assets to a bigger telecom firm, I wrote a business plan and just went to 3 or 4 mentors around that knew me and knew technology and knew the industry I'd be basically serving. And they're like, that's a great idea. Yes, that's a needed service. And there weren't a lot of people out doing that at that point in time. But when the company restructured and I said, okay, I either need to get a job or start this company, and I had enough support and from other people and through praying about it that I was like, okay, let's start the company. And so the rest is kind of been a wild ride, but
history.
History, exactly. There you go.
Well, that's cool. I dealt with a lot of the .coms back at that time, and the IP kind of companies as well. And it was amazing how they would blow up and then implode just as fast.
Yeah.
It was a tough time. So for you to have been able to turn that risk, that pain into a business is pretty cool.
And just because Bob won't ask it, because we had this conversation during the break.
I didn't want your abuse.
I think it's worth talking about. Bob likes to ask, what type of tool, what's the tool that you guys use to help identify people? And we got in this conversation that how often I feel like that people worship the tool and they're looking for the tool to tell them who to hire. And I just would like for you to share your perspective of the tool. Or is it one thing that you can really rely on, or is it just one of many things that should be considered?
Well, it's one of many things, but I would consider the tool as a process, and inside the process, there's lots of tools. So in the beginning of a good hire is really a good understanding of the need of the real job, and then really being able to communicate that in a clear job description, and then taking that clear job description into a clear recruiting job description. Mm-hmm. And then from there, having skill-based interview questions so you can screen people. So it's really not just one thing. It's a set of processes around skill-based interviewing things. Does behavior have anything to do with this job? If so, are there tools that we can use, like a DISC profile? Mm-hmm. And we do use that, but it's a lot of basic things when done in the right order and at the right time, and sort of slowing people down, because it's not uncommon for me to get calls saying, I need somebody. I'm like, well, what do you need? And they give me 2 words, and they think that I understand what they need. So that's because when people call us, they're calling us in pain.
Sure.
And so they're in a business pain that you can't just snap your fingers and have somebody. You can have somebody there the next day, but if you don't use a complete process that does a lot of in-depth background, you could end up with the wrong person.
And that's really expensive too.
So,
yes.
And that's in the situation where somebody fails in a position, do you find that that's more often the company's fault for not having set things up in the beginning, or is it more that employee's fault for not doing what they should have done?
Well, usually it's both. And where the issue is, sometimes the company doesn't do a great job of really understanding their need, be it in a development team or even be it a sales position. So you're at a company and you have a sales position. Even in the radio business, they sell ads, right? You gotta. Everybody sells something to somebody. Mm-hmm. So, or everybody's building something, or everybody's counting something, right? So when you really break it down, a lot of times, if a company doesn't holistically look at the need and be able to push back from itself, or sort of push back from the desk and have a perspective of where that role fits in the organization and what are the specific tasks that need to be done and why, and then fit that into a good, clear, job description, and then going from there. Because even if you have their own internal recruiters, let's say somebody has a hiring manager that can recruit their own people from, say, LinkedIn, because you talk about tools, LinkedIn's a tool we heavily leverage. But even if you don't have a good job description and I have access to all the candidates in the world, it's not going to help you. Or if I have, it really comes through a lot of process and a lot of discipline. And go back to the military piece, being able to say, okay, let's slow this down enough so that we can get a good look at what the position is. Let's slow the candidates down enough to where we can get a good look at their skills, their capabilities, their goals, their personal situations. Because when you say, why do hires fail? Hires fail, for thousands of reasons. Why are hires right? From my professional experience, is because you're able to, in a procedural, process-driven way, slow things down enough to make a credible decision at multiple levels. That both this is really the job, and yes, after going through multiple rounds with this person fits the business need, this person fits the culture, this person fits the values, this person isn't going to be driving 2 hours each way to the job. This pay rate is fair and can keep this person. And, and candidly, there's a click between the manager and the person, and they can, grow to as iron sharpens iron to make each other better as a team, because it's where a lot of, issues are within fits. And, you see people move from jobs And sometimes when you see that, like, oh, okay, now I see that. Now it makes sense.
Yeah, the hindsight 2020 thing.
Yeah, exactly.
What would you say, as an employer right now, what do you think are the biggest threats that are facing employers?
One, I think most employers, and I'm going to speak for small, mid-sized companies or divisions of multi-billion-dollar companies. So when we deal with business leaders, owners, and presidents, the economy is really trying to think of the right word. They don't know which ends up. They don't know where it's going. Because the data, there's so much confusing data coming out that we're expanding. Oh, we're not expanding quite as fast. The combination of the economy, the government, and how they're interfacing to small and mid-sized businesses and even large businesses. And then just being able to say that because the combination of the economy, the government, and candidly the consumer really is a big piece of this whole economy, and really it's changing fast. So really a combination of the economy, the intersection of government and business, and what I would call as a fast changing demand set from a set of customers, be that consumer customers or business customers. Those three things that can keep you up all night long.
Yeah. So before the break, Stephen kind of prompted us for the question of what's the difference between being a time manager and a time miser, and I hadn't seen the time miser term used before until you put it in the interview form, so I thought that was interesting. So what's the difference in those two things for you?
Well, first of all, you can't manage time.
Amen.
Okay, it's the time we started at the beginning of the radio show is now gone, never to return.
And we got 1 minute left.
Exactly. And so being a time miser means saying, what are the most important things that I have to do that if I don't ever get this time back, which I won't, that I need to do with my time right now? It's a combination of planning and a mental outlook of I'm not getting this time back, so what's the most important thing I can do with the time right now?
It's prioritization.
It's prioritization, it's planning, it's process-oriented type things, and it's really putting first things first. I mean, and that has to do everyone with our spirituality, with our families, with our our jobs and different pieces of our jobs, and even trying to put in there to have some fun in there, because if you can't have any fun in there, you're like going, what am I doing here? So it's a lot of those combination things. So I really have a pretty rigorous process for trying to put things into a set of perspectives, and then be able to time block, is the term I use, is time block, so that I can be most effective for my team.
And now time is up. So Tad, I'd really like to thank you for joining us today. I'd like to also thank our audience, Bob, for putting up with me. Yes, I appreciate you. If you'd like to get in touch with Tad, please visit humcapinc.com or humcaphr.com. If you want to see a previous guest, please visit nextlevelshow.com. You can connect with us on all the social medias. What did I forget, Bob?
That we'll see them next week.
Have a great week. We won't see you.
Well, never.
You'll hear us.
You have been listening to The Next Level, Conversations That Propel Business with Stephen Nooner and Bob Gibbons. Join us every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. for more prolific conversations that will take your business to the next level.